In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about some best practices for the layout, how you arrange your images for the executive summary. And I've suggested that it works best if you use some sort of a standard or layout or graphic design rule. And it's a big field. People go to school for years and years and years and work years and years and years to get good at it. So we're going to take one of the more simple and straightforward rules and just apply it. You can use other different rules, but this is a very, very common one that is very powerful and good, and that's to use something called the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is a mathematical model for things that look good to our eyes. And it's been used for thousands of years. And one of the main proponents of it were the Grecians. And a golden ratio ends up being about 1.6. And so let's use that in layout. So here's a visualization of deliverables. And good layout means that you have margin around your work. You have a place to write annotations, and then you want it to take up the space in some way that looks good to people's eyes. And that way is the golden ratio. So here is a rectangle that is 6.12 wide by 3.81 wide. And I think if I do 6.12 divided by 3.81, it will be 1.6. So let's just do that. 6.12 divided by 3.81, 1.6, about. Here's the other thing. You don't have to be exact. Our eyes aren't robot eyes. But if something sort of like that is going to look pretty good. So you could put a nice thing in here. So let's do that. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to take one of these and I'll put a snip. That's sort of the right size. Let me take a snip of that. This is somebody's very nice work from last week. I'm going to put it in here and look, it's kind of the right size. It comes out pretty close. Now, if I want to get it a little bit closer, I can do something called crop. So if I click on it, this little cropping bar comes up, and I can crop it back in one direction to get that right. Now, that works pretty well. If I had done something else, it would have changed it. If instead of doing that, instead of cropping it, if I had stretched it, you can see it changes the proportions of the drawing, and I do not want to do that. So I'm going to crop it to see the part that I want to see. And that's about the right size. And I no longer need that. Now I do want to maybe have a little bit of framing around it. If I click on it, I can go to the format options and maybe put a drop shadow on it. Now here's another thing. I got white around part of it, but not all the way around. So I might want to crop it down so that I see only the image. There we go. And that's got very close to the golden ratio, and our eyes like it. And I can write on here, this is a patterns with solid hatch. And I could do better with this. These should all start with capitals. When you're doing titles, usually you start each word that, and I might even make it a little bit bigger, highlight it, and make it a little bit bigger. Now over here, I've got a golden ratio rectangle again, but it's a little bit more complex and more cool. So here, when you do the golden ratio, you can also subdivide it with a square, which leaves a golden ratio over here, which I can subdivide by a square that leaves me the golden ratio here. Okay, so these are some actual sizes, 3.81 by 3.81. Let's see if one of these looks a little more square. That one looks pretty square. Let's see if I can get that to fit in one of the squares. Looks almost square. So let me come on back over here. Put this in. And again, they don't all have to touch each other. That one comes out pretty close. Actually, I can make some minor adjustments to it and maybe square it up a little bit. There we go. Whoop, no, that one. There. So that's doing a pretty nice job. And again, I can go to the format options and put a drop shadow on that one, just so that it's got a little bit of identification. Now this one is also square. So let me look for another one that's kind of square. That one's kind of square. That one's kind of square. Kind of neato looking. That one's kind of square. Let me put that one in there just for fun. And it's not exactly square, but I'm going to do some cropping of it later on. And I can do some things to get rid of certain parts of it later on if I want to, but let me just take it as is. I can be a little bit more careful. Let's get this one into here. And I can crop this if I want it to be big. But I want to crop it evenly on each side so that it doesn't look like it's too far off. Crop just a hair more over there. There we go. So that's looking pretty nice. And I'm going to align it with the top of that one. Maybe I have to move it down just a hair more. I'll get that aligned in just a little bit. That looks pretty nice. And now I've got another golden ratio left down here. So let me find another one. I thought I saw one. That one's kind of golden ratio-y kind of size. So is that. I actually think this one all on its own. Let's see if I can get it close enough to be one all on its own. I may have a little bit of cropping to do right there and see how that fits. So I'm just kind of trying to do some nice design work. And I'd like these two to be the same width by the time I'm done. I might have to do a little bit more cropping on one of those. I might adjust these to even up their sizes a little bit. But now I can get rid of my outlines. And you can see I've got lots of room. I've got a lot on there, but it's well filled up. And I've got a little bit more work to do. I probably need to squeeze this one down just a hair. Get it to line up at the top. See how the red lines up at the top? And will line up on the bottom. And now that looks like one nice unit that's been kind of arranged well. And here's another one. So that's how you use the golden ratio. Okay, and I might want to take this one and replace it with another one. Now this works really nice. There's so many things I could do. I could take this pattern and put it over here. I could break this one into 3. I could break it into 2. I could even keep subdividing, or I can switch these so there's taller, so that this is on the left and these are on the bottom and this is on the top. There's tons of ways to use the golden ratio. But here's using a single pattern. Here's using 3. And I gave you those dimensions already. Here's another way. When you go to your activity ones, if you want to just use one image, try to set it up and crop it. Don't stretch it. Crop it to 11.6 wide by 7.2 tall, 25 tall. This is the golden ratio, and it gives you room to make notes on either side. If you have 2 images you need to or want to show, you can take that 11.6 by 7.25 and divide it into 2, 7.25 by 7.25, and that leaves a golden ratio over here going up and down, 4.35 by 7.25. Let's just check that out. 7.25 divided by 4.35, 1.6-ish. Okay? And then potentially you'd go back and do that other one that gives you 3. So these are very common ways that you would space out your images for your executive summary in week number 2. Now, you might have other standard ways that you would like to do it. That's fine. But I'll be looking for those standard ways. Other standards are Foursquare, rule of thirds, 5 on 3 instead of the 1.6. So all of those are other ways to arrange something so that it looks good on your page. Now, I'm going to make this available to you. On the front page here, I've given a link to a very basic golden ratio graphic design little primer. Okay. And so you can go through this. You can see here are some of those variations that we're talking about. You can even do it with triangles if you want. Okay. Here's really nice graphic design using golden ratio. You can use golden ratio for your typography. How big or small are your letters? And here's a little bit about cropping images using the golden ratio. And again, cropping images using the golden ratio and something called Archimedes spiral. Okay. So there you go. There's a little bit of information about what I mean when I say use a good industry standard graphic layout for your presentation.